So welcome back. So I was talking about importance of hypothesis. So hypothesis, as I mentioned earlier, it is going to give a wonderful opportunity for a researcher as well as research to be on track. And moreover, like whatever information you will be required to investigate properly, systematically, comprehensively, hypothesis is going to help you to locate that information as well. Whatever problem you have identified, you to resolve that problem, you need some information, additional information, and that and hypothesis will help you to locate that information more comprehensively. Now let me compare problem with hypothesis. Problem means what? जो research में हमने problem identify किया था, questions. What is the difference between problem or question and hypothesis? Hypothesis is an assumption that can be tested and can be proved to be right or wrong. So whenever we are talking about hypothesis, it is always a testable statement, because whenever you are having one statement which can be tested and which can be proved to be right or wrong, then only that can be referred as hypothesis. Whereas as far as problem is concerned, problem is broad question which cannot be directly tested. Problem can be scientifically investigated after converting it into a form of hypothesis. Basically, what I hope now you must have understood that hypothesis is a next step of problem, because you are going to identify question, you are going to identify problem first, and then you will be formulating hypothesis. You will be formulating hypothesis. So hypothesis is always a kind of a testable statement, whereas problem can never be a testable statement. It is a kind of questions only. Now, what are the sources of hypothesis? Sources, मतलब hypothesis आप कैसे draft करोगे, right? So you can draft hypothesis very comprehensively by having discussion with the colleague or expert about the problem, its origin and objectives in seeking solution. मतलब जो भी आपका problem है, because as I mentioned earlier कि आपको क्या करना है, पहले problem को identify करना है, question generate करना है, and then you will have to follow some certain process, and that problem will be converted into hypothesis. उसके बाद आपको from the problem itself you have to draft the hypothesis statement. तो कैसे करोगे आप? Once you have the problem, you will be discussing that problem with your colleague or expert about the nature of the problem, about the origin of the problem, about the objective of the investigation which you will be looking for. You can examine the data and records for possible trends and peculiarities. Like let us say, like you are having hypothesis, like जैसे मैंने कहा ना आपको कि आपको सेंसिटिविटी बढ़ानी है, तो आप देख सकते हो कि अगर सेंसिटिविटी बढ़ानी है तो अभी तक लोगों ने क्या काम किया, उसके ट्रेंड्स क्या है, peculiarities क्या है, so that you will be able to formulate your own hypothesis. You can review the similar studies. मतलब hypothesis इसलिए मैंने कहा कि if before formulation of hypothesis you need to do literature review. Problem identification के बाद में literature review and then hypothesis. Literature review will help you to understand what is happening elsewhere. Exploratory personal investigation observation, मतलब खुद का observation, खुद के experiences, खुद कुछ काम करना है, not only like बाकी लोगों ने क्या काम किया, but like based on their work, what is going to be your own observations, right? Based on that also it will be good for you to formulate hypothesis statement. Logical deduction from the existing theory, like whatever the fundamental you have read, whatever existing theory you have read, then you will be having your own thought process before you go for the formulation of hypothesis. Continuity of the research. Continuity of the research, what does it mean? It means that लोगों ने कुछ काम किया, जैसे कि मान लो मैं आपको बता रहा था कि by using organic conductive polymer, I just wanted to convert carbon nanotube, modify carbon nanotube by organic conductive polymer and enhance the sensitivity. लेकिन मान लो मुझे पता चल गया कि this option has already been explored by the student, by some research scholar. तो मैं देखूंगा कि अगर ये ऑप्शन अगर एक्सप्लोर किया है तो what kind of deviation I can do, what kind of new approach I can adopt in my investigation, so that by using same material still I will be able to reach the target, right? And intuition and the personal experience, मतलब आपके अंदर से आपको क्या लगता है, आपको मतलब कैसे, बहुत बार ऐसा होगा कि you have seen the literature review and through literature review somehow you are not happy, right? Whatever data you got, that is not going to provide you any clue to so that it will form some kind of technical background for your further investigation. मतलब आपको ऐसा लगता है कि यार whatever data I have collected उससे तो ये हो नहीं पाएगा, but still आपको लगता है कि ये हो जाएगा. मतलब आपको out of your own experience, out of your own knowledge, logical thinking, आपको लगता है कि किताबों में नहीं है लेकिन मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि हो सकता है. And then you can formulate hypothesis, try it, and if you can successful, you are going to be a very happy person. What are the characteristics? Hypothesis की characteristics क्या होनी चाहिए? There should be conceptual clarity. It should be very clear and precise. Hypothesis कभी भी doubtful नहीं रहेगा. मतलब कोई भी confusing नहीं रहना चाहिए, ambiguous नहीं होना चाहिए. It should be very clear. It should be very specific and have limited in scope. मतलब कैसा specific होना चाहिए, scope उसका limited होना. Open ended नहीं, बहुत ज्यादा अगर open ended रहा तो it is going to be very difficult for you. I'm going to quote some example of all these characteristics as well. It should have consistency. It should consistent with the objective of the research. मतलब जो भी आप करना चाहते हो उससे साथ उसका consistency होना चाहिए. मतलब कहने का मतलब ये कि आपने प्रेडिक्शन कुछ और किया है और करना कुछ और रहे हो, करना कुछ और चाहते हो आप. So it is going to be a kind of inconsistency between your objectives and hypothesis. It should not be there. It should be capable of being testability, right? मतलब मैं वो बताऊंगा आपको कि कौन सा स्टेटमेंट टेस्टेबल नहीं होगा और कौन सा टेस्टेबल होगा. Expectancy means it should state the expected relationship between variables. जो भी variables है, जैसे मैंने आपको बताया कि मेरा 2 materials है, right? जैसे कि कौन सा है organic conductive polymer and कार्बन नैनोट्यूब. ये 2 मटेरियल्स है, 2 वेरिएबल्स है मेरे पास. इसमें कुछ रिलेशनशिप होनी चाहिए क्योंकि मुझे पता है कि इसमें कोई रिलेशनशिप नहीं है. कार्बन नैनोट्यूब and organic conductive polymer may not have any sort of interaction because I need to understand the physics, the fundamental physics, basic physics of carbon nanotube, basic physics of organic conductive polymer, how they are going to be interacted once they are coming together, right? So if I am not able to understand that, and somehow if I am not able to get any clue through literature, then that cannot be considered as a should not be used in formulation of the hypothesis. So these are some of the characteristics of hypothesis. I am going to give you some examples now. As I mentioned earlier, there are 2 hypotheses. एक होता है null hypothesis, दूसरा होता है alternate hypothesis. Now what is null hypothesis and what is alternate hypothesis? Let me tell you. The null hypothesis states that there is no relationship between the measured phenomenon and the dependent variable and independent variable. मैंने जैसे बताया कि एग्जांपल मैंने दिया था आपको, कार्बन नैनोट्यूब को मैं ऑर्गेनिक कंडक्टिंग पॉलीमर से मॉडिफाई करना चाहता हूं, लेकिन मुझे पता है कि मैं ये स्टेटमेंट कर रहा हूं कि आफ्टर मॉडिफिकेशन I will not be able to enhance the sensitivity. This is going to be my null hypothesis. After modification of C and D by organic conducting polymer, I will not be able to enhance sensitivity. This would be a this will be a statement of null hypothesis. What will be alternate hypothesis? After modification of SW and D by organic conducting polymer, sensitivity is going to be enhanced. This is going to be alternate hypothesis. Now I'm going to quote some another examples, rather general example. Let us say age has no effect on mathematical ability. Age has no effect on mathematical ability. Another statement, taking aspirin daily does not affect heart attack risk. Taking aspirin daily does not affect heart attack risk. So these are the negative statements. So you must have understood now, null hypothesis always gives us a negative statement. Null hypothesis always gives us negative statement. Whereas alternate hypotheses are going to give us a positive statement. They are going to show a strong relationship between the variables, right? Like ये देखिए, ये यहाँ पर क्या लिखा था हमने? Age has no effect on mathematical ability, whereas alternate hypothesis is going to be teenagers are better at mathematical abilities than adults. Teenagers are better at mathematical abilities than adults. It means you can see age has, यहाँ पर हमने क्या किया, हमने predict किया कि age has no effect on mathematical ability, whereas we are claiming positively that teenagers are better in mathematical abilities as compared to adults. Similarly, ये दूसरा statement था, taking aspirin daily does not affect heart attack risk, whereas here daily consumption of aspirin will reduce heart attack risk. तो यहाँ पर हमने क्या किया, daily consumption को हमने yes. So in the first statement, what we have done, taking aspirin daily does not affect heart attack risk. तो यहाँ पर हम बताया दिस इज नेगेटिव स्टेटमेंट, एस्पिरिन लेने के बावजूद भी हार्ट अटैक रिस्क पे कोई अफेक्ट नहीं होगा, whereas here daily consumption of aspirin will reduce heart attack risk. इसका मतलब ये हमें बता रहा है कि अगर हम डेली एस्पिरिन का कंजम्पशन करते हैं तो it is going to reduce my heart attack risk. So this is a kind of positive statement. So now you must have understood that null hypothesis always gives you the negative statement and alternate hypothesis gives you the positive statement, and therefore researcher always try to justify alternate hypothesis, and they are going to always reject null hypothesis. So an alternative hypothesis is a statement that is simply inverse null hypothesis. There is some statistical significance between two measured phenomena. जैसे मैंने बताया कि null hypothesis में क्या होता है, हम बताते हैं कि there won't be any relationship between two variables, whereas alternate hypothesis always we claim that there is a strong relationship between them. So null hypothesis is what researcher tries to disapprove, as I mentioned earlier, whereas alternate hypothesis is what researcher want to prove. कभी भी alternate hypothesis कोई कभी भी researcher prove करने की कोशिश करेंगे, alternate null hypothesis कभी भी reject करने की, disprove करने की कोशिश करेंगे. Now I am going to give you more example of null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis. One more example of null hypothesis. Age has no effect on how cell phones are used for internet access. So this is a negative statement. Age has no effect on how cell phones are used for internet access. Whereas alternate hypothesis is going to be a kind of positive statement. Teenagers are better in using cell phones for internet access. Teenagers are better in using cell phone for internet access. तो आप देखिए कि हमने क्या किया यहाँ पर, we try to show that there is no relationship between the variables, whereas we believe that there is a strong relationship. So this is negative statement in null hypothesis. Alternate hypothesis is kind of positive statement. This is a comparison of null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis. This is going to be very, very important. Comparison is going to be very important. ये यहाँ पर मैं इसलिए जोर दे रहा हूँ कि मुझे पता है there are many times researcher they don't understand what is hypothesis. Forget about null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis, but they don't understand hypothesis at all. Truly speaking, this is very, very important. This is a foundation. This is the beginning of research. And if you don't understand this, then you know that you are going to struggle throughout your PhD. And therefore, I thought, let me give you a clear distinction between null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis. Now, what is the difference? Based on definition, null hypothesis is general statement that state that there is no relationship between two phenomena under consideration, whereas alternate hypothesis is a statement that describes that there is a strong relationship between the selected variables in the study. As far as observation is concerned, null hypothesis believes that the results are observed as a result of chance, whereas alternate hypothesis always believes that results are observed as a result of some real cause. आप देखिए, whenever you are comparing this, you must have realized now that alternate hypothesis is a kind of real hypothesis in our investigation. जो आप करना चाहेंगे, जो आप मतलब चाहेंगे कि ये हो जाए मेरे रिसर्च में. Nature, what is the nature? It is the hypothesis that researcher tries to disprove. As far as null hypothesis is concerned, alternate hypothesis, it is the hypothesis that researcher tries to prove. In terms of result of null hypothesis indicate no changes in opinions or action, whereas alternate hypothesis result of an alternate hypothesis causes changes in options and actions. So this is what, like, लाइक अगर आप चाहोगे कुछ काम करने के बावजूद भी कोई चेंजेस नहीं चाहोगे, इट मीन्स दैट देयर इज नो इनोवेशन एट ऑल, right? So alternate hypothesis always try to, what is, that is why, what is significance of data? If the null hypothesis is accepted, result of the study become insignificant, whereas if the alternate hypothesis is accepted, result of the study becomes significant. क्योंकि मान लो मतलब आप जो करना चाहते हैं वो खुद आप कह रहे हैं कि होगा नहीं, right? Then if it is the case, you may raise the question why we are making negative statement. The reason for making negative statement is you are challenging yourself. You are challenging yourself, like you are making one positive statement that by modifying carbon nanotube with organic conducting polymer you are going to enhance sensitivity. This was your positive alternate hypothesis and strong, like very positive hypothesis. Now you are making negative statement that, oh no, even if by doing this you are not going to enhance. So you are posing a kind of creating kind of challenging situation for you in your research, and as a result of that you will be working hard and try to prove your alternate hypothesis. Its importance: the null hypothesis allows acceptance of correct existing theories and consistency of multiple experiments, whereas in alternate hypotheses are important as it establishes a relationship between two variables, resulting in new improved theories. So whenever you are talking about innovation, whenever you are talking about novelty, it is always going to be there in alternate hypothesis. Null hypothesis is denoted by HO, and alternate hypothesis is always denoted by H1 or HA. And as far as the mathematical expression is concerned, it is followed by equal to sign. In null hypothesis, always followed by equal to sign, whereas alternate hypothesis always followed is not always followed by not equal to, less than or greater than. It's not going to be equal to, so either it will be not equal to, less than or greater than. These are more examples. Let me give you the example of null hypothesis first. Application of biofertilizer do not increase plant growth. Application of biofertilizer do not increase plant growth. You can see a negative statement. What is your alternate hypothesis? Application of biofertilizer increase plant growth. So this is negative statement. This is positive statement. Again, another null hypothesis. Light color has no effect on plant growth. Light color has no effect on plant growth, whereas light color affects plant growth. So you can see that I hope that you, with these examples, you must have understood what is alternate hypothesis and what is the null hypothesis. Now, question is how it is going to be tested. I told you earlier that the hypothesis, it is a testable statement. Okay, so first of all, let me tell you how the statement can be, which statement can be referred as hypothesis, which cannot, right? So let me tell you first, hypothesis testing process. So it consisting of 4 steps. The first step is we must formulate hypothesis. After doing that, we have to find a right test for our hypothesis, because there are 2 different kind of tests and you need to select one out of those two. I'm going to tell you what are those 2 tests. Then we need to execute that, and accordingly we need to make the final decision. Let us start with the beginning. What is hypothesis, right? जैसे मैंने बताया कि though there are many ways to define it, it must natural क्या होगा, natural statement क्या होगा? Hypothesis is an idea that can be tested. Hypothesis is an idea that can be tested. मतलब कभी भी अगर वो test नहीं कर सकते, that cannot be referred as hypothesis there. This is not the normal definition, but it explains because this is not a definition rather, but this is a kind of the feature of the hypothesis, that the idea which can be tested can be referred as hypothesis. Like example बता रहा हूँ मैं आपको अभी. If we say that apples in Aurangabad are expensive, if we say that apples in Aurangabad are expensive, this is an idea or only statement. This cannot be tested because expensive is a very ambiguous word, right? It doesn't have any absolute answer, right? Because it cannot be tested. जैसे कि मैंने कहा कि यहाँ पर एप्पल बहुत महंगे हैं, बट महंगे कैसे टेस्ट करोगे आप अगर कहोगे कि yes, apples in Aurangabad are more than 100, like the cost of apples in Aurangabad is 100 rupees per kg. राइट। तो आप टेस्ट करेंगे कि ठीक है, आप मार्केट में जाओगे और टेस्ट करोगे कि वेदर इट इज गोइंग टू बी 100 रुपी पर केजी और नॉट। आप मार्केट में जाओगे, परचेस करोगे, आपको पता चलेगा कि इट इज मोर देन दैट, सो इट मींस योर हाइपोथेसिस वर रॉन्ग। व्हाट वाज हाइपोथेसिस? हाइपोथेसिस वाज apples in Aurangabad costing 100 rupees per kg. This was hypothesis. So this can be tested. Whereas if it is only like apples in Aurangabad are expensive, it is like very vague statement. This can be only statement, this can be only idea, but this can never be referred as hypothesis, right? Because hypothesis need to be testable. So we need to make some changes in the statement so that we can compare, right? तो अभी क्या किया हमने? If we define expensive, जैसे कि हमने बताया कि प्राइस हायर देन 400 रुपीज पर केजी, राइट? जैसे मैंने बताया कि पहले भी मैंने बताया कि if you are saying that the price of like the apple in Aurangabad is more than 100 rupees per kg, more than 500 rupees per kg, so this can be tested. Okay, so again let me tell you, like the statement which can be tested, that can be referred as hypothesis, otherwise it is not. Another example, would the India do better or worse under a Modi administration compared to Manmohan Singh administration? Would the India do better or worse under Modi administration compared to Manmohan Singh administration? So देखिए, as far as the statistics is concerned, this is only statement. This cannot be tested. क्योंकि मोदी का गवर्नमेंट एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन अच्छा था एज कम्पेयर टू मनमोहन सिंह, राइट? तो ये टेस्ट नहीं हो सकता, because unless we set some parameters, it can never be referred as hypothesis. So this kind of statement are only statement or idea, but cannot be tested statistically and therefore cannot be referred as hypothesis. I hope you must have understood now what is hypothesis. तो hypothesis जब भी आप formulate करोगे तो आपके पास fix कुछ absolute number चाहिए. आपने जैसे मैंने बताया कि I am going to enhance sensitivity of after modification of carbon nanotube by using organic conducting polymer, sensitivity will be enhanced. So this cannot be referred as hypothesis. If I make a statement, if I put some number, so by after modification, sensitivity will be enhanced by 10% or more than 50% or more than 75%, then it becomes hypothesis. So you need to remember that whatever statement you are making, whatever idea you are proposing, that need to be testable. If it is not, then it cannot be referred as hypothesis. Now let me tell you what are the tests, how it can be tested. अब मैं आपके सामने एग्जांपल देता हूं. जैसे मैंने बताया कि there are two different tests, two different options for testing the hypothesis. One is a two-sided test. One is first is a two-sided test. तो क्या है? जैसे एग्जांपल देता हूं मैं. According to Economic Survey of India, the average salary of professor in India is 2 lakh rupees a month. Okay, according to Economic Survey of India, average salary of professor in India is 2 lakh rupees a month. So this is a test, this is a hypothesis. आप देखिए ये वैध नहीं है क्योंकि यहाँ पर नंबर दिया है 2 lakh rupees a month. So you can go ahead and test whether it is 2 lakh rupees, less than 2 lakh rupees or more than 2 lakh rupees, right? So if you want to test that estimate is correct or not, then you have to formulate two hypotheses. One is null, other is, कभी भी आप देखिए कि आपको whenever you are making one statement, you need to have two hypotheses. One is negative statement that use you null hypothesis, other is positive statement, right? So there are two hypotheses that are made. The null hypothesis denoted at ये तो मैंने आपको पहले बताया कि null hypothesis denoted by H0 and alternate hypothesis denoted by H1 or H8. Now, what is null hypothesis? Null hypothesis is like another statement which you don't want, right? Let us say if you believe that it is 2 lakh, right? Then what should be null hypothesis? What this can be a null hypothesis then, right? The average salary of professor in India is 2 lakh rupees. Okay, so if you let us say if you don't believe that this is going to happen, then it is better to consider as a null hypothesis. जो हो नहीं सकता ऐसा लगता है, that should be your null hypothesis. Like आपको लगता है कि नहीं 2 लाख से either कम होगा या ज्यादा होगा, so it is better to consider this statement as a null hypothesis because we always try to disprove null hypothesis, right? इसलिए यहाँ पर क्या किया? The average salary of professor in India 2 lakh rupees. This is going to be a null hypothesis. What should be alternate hypothesis? Average salary of professor in India is not 2 lakh rupees. राइट हमारा अल्टरनेट क्या होगा, क्योंकि ये हमें प्रूव नहीं करना है, हमें एक्सेप्ट नहीं करना है, इसलिए हमने इसको नल हाइपोथेसिस बनाया. एंड अल्टरनेट हाइपोथेसिस वुड बी the average salary is not going to be 2 lakh rupees. It can be either less than 2 lakh rupees or more than 2 lakh rupees. So concept of null hypothesis क्या है? That you want to check whether 2 lakh rupees is close enough to the true average predicted by our sample. मतलब जो प्रेडिक्शन वो इन्होंने किया है इकोनॉमिक सर्वे ऑफ इंडिया में, क्या आपको लगता है कि सैलरी उसके आसपास है, राइट? तो क्या होगा, आप क्या करेंगे, आइदर then what you are going to do, so you have considered that as a null hypothesis. आपने एक्सेप्ट कर दिया, आपने मान लिया कि 2 lakh rupees is not going to be true, average salary is not going to be 2 lakh rupees, so you have considered that as a null hypothesis. Alternate hypothesis जैसे मैंने बताया, either it will be less or more, right? So what you are going to do, you will be going to the field, you will be taking some data, you will be asking, you will be having questions, you will be reaching to the individual teachers, going to the salary section, you will be collecting data, and then there will be two possibilities. Either salary will be, three possibilities rather, either it will be exactly 2 lakh rupees, or average would be less than 2 lakh rupees or greater than 2 lakh rupees. So your null hypothesis was salary is going to be, average of salary is going to be 2 lakh rupees. Alternate hypothesis can be, there could be two options, either less than or more like greater than. So that is because there it's going to be two-tailed. It is going to have two different tail, either less than, because this is where average is going to be 2 lakh rupees, null hypothesis. And after doing some experimentation, after collecting data, you may prove your one of the null alternate hypothesis. Either it is going to be less than 2 lakh rupees or greater than 2 lakh rupees. Therefore, this kind of test is called as two-sided or two-tailed test. Okay, so you need to understand that the nature of your hypothesis statement. Accordingly, you need to consider whether two-tailed test, two-sided test is going to be adequate for you or not. Another example is one-sided test. Another example क्या है? One-sided. Let us say Rakesh told you that he think professor can earn more than 24 lakhs rupees per year. राकेश ने बताया कि प्रोफेसर कैन अर्न 24 लाख रुपीस पर ईयर, बट यू हैव सम डाउट, सो यू डिजाइन द टेस्ट एंड सी हु इज राइट, राइट? तो अकॉर्डिंगली आप क्या करेंगे, यू विल बी फॉर्मुलेटिंग null hypothesis. What is null hypothesis? Professor salary is more than 24 lakhs. Professor salary is more than 24 lakhs, क्योंकि ये आपका null hypothesis है अभी. You can see here because what he says, he think that प्रोफेसर अर्न मोर देन 24 lakhs, राइट? तो आपको भरोसा नहीं है उसके ऊपर, इसलिए आपने क्या किया, उसको null hypothesis बनाया because you want to disprove that. So professor salary is more than 24 lakhs. So alternate hypothesis will cover anything else. So either it will be less or equal to. So it is going to be one-sided only because more than 24 lakhs you have considered that as a null hypothesis. So what would be your alternate hypothesis? Either it would be equal to 24 lakh or it will be less than 24 lakh. It means this is going to be only one-sided. This is going to be only one-sided. So depending on the statement, you need to consider, you need to opt one of the tests which are available. Like there are two tests, there are two ways to test the hypothesis, one-sided or two-sided. Depending on even null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis, you can go for one out of those two. So generally, research is trying to reject, as I mentioned earlier, null hypothesis, and they are going to always accept the alternate hypothesis. After hypothesis, as I mentioned earlier, hypothesis statement होने के बाद आपका रहेगा objectives. You will be drafting set of objectives. So whenever you are drafting objectives should be in bullet form, and you should have this feature. It should be smart. What is smart? It should be very specific. It should be measurable. It should be achievable, realistic and time bound. मतलब स्पेसिफिक होना चाहिए, बहुत ब्रॉड नहीं होना चाहिए, मेजरेबल होना चाहिए. जो भी ऑब्जेक्टिव आप रखेंगे, इट शुड, यू मस्ट बी एबल टू मेजर इट. आप अगर मेजरेबल नहीं रखेंगे, आपको पता है कि इट्स नॉट गोइंग टू बी मेजरेबल, सो इट्स नॉट गोइंग टू बी गुड, आई मीन इट्स नॉट गोइंग टू बी रेफर्ड एज स्मार्ट ऑब्जेक्टिव. इट शुड बी अचीवेबल. लाइक आप जैसे मान लो, व्हेनेवर यू आर डूइंग प्रोजेक्ट इन एमएससी, देयर वुड बी 2 years span. So during 2 year, whether whatever objective you are planning, are you going to achieve it during 2 year span? So that is very, very important. So you need to understand that whether it is going to be achievable, during 2 year span. Then it should be realistic. बहुत बार ऐसा होता है कि हमें पता है कि हो ही नहीं सकता. We believe that it's not going to happen. It's all imaginary. So that should not be a part of your objectives, and last for this time bound, right? So your objective should be very specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. Once you have objectives like this, is some of the example. Let us say to examine alternative chemical modes for stabilization of rice bran oil. Right? You can see this is bullet form. It's not a statement. Or second example, to determine the exact source of the cause of odor and to explore the methods for its removal. So these are the kind of objectives you will be having in your investigation. And once you set the objectives, then you will be having methodology. Methodology means the technique which you will be using to achieve your objectives, right? So after hypothesis, there will be set of objectives, and then there will be set of methodology. And once you set the methodology, you will be planning experiment. You will be actually doing experiment either in the laboratory or collecting the data. Once you have the data with you, then you will be doing the analysis of that data. Okay, depending on analysis, you will be drawing some conclusion, and that is going to be end of your the entire research process. But you need to understand that whatever process you will be using, whatever the research you will be doing, as I mentioned earlier, it should be useful for some cross section of society. Conclusion draw करते समय आपको उतना ध्यान में रखना पड़ेगा कि whatever conclusion you are drawing out of your research, that conclusion should be useful for the society. Right now, and then this is another very important replication. Replication means whatever work you have done, it should be replicable. It should be replicable. मतलब आप अगर फिर से खुद ही एक बार करोगे तो सेम डेटा आपने जनरेट करते आना चाहिए आपको. If you are not able to generate same data again, then it means that something was wrong in your experiment, and that need to be repeated again. Right? So replicability is one of the important peculiarity of the research. Now I'm going to tell you what you will be doing in this fourth semester. I'm going. This is the course structure of your first semester. You can see we are in first semester now. You are in first semester now. We are having this research methodology course. This is 2 credit. In this case, as I told you earlier, I'm telling you what the research is all about, how the problem can be identified, how literature review can be done, how hypothesis can be formulated, how objectives can be drafted, how methodology can be finalized, and how experiment plan can be prepared. So like you will be ready to go. So whatever you will have to do in second semester, you are getting training, you are getting some kind of input from your research, from your teacher during this particular semester. This is theory course. Now in second semester, if you look at this, you have got PHYR, last row you can see research project part 1. So what you have to do here, this is a review of literature for research project and formulation of topic of research project. So whatever I am teaching now, you will be doing actually in reality in second semester. मतलब जैसे मैंने बताया आपको कि broad topic पहले choose करना है, आपको choose करना पड़ेगा, आपको then fundamental पढ़ना है, fundamental पढ़ना पड़ेगा, and then I said like you will have to identify the best journal, you will have to do it. Then I told you how to do literature review. You will be doing literature review in the second semester. So everything, whatever I am telling you, you will be doing it in second semester. And for that purpose, you have got one research project part 1 for 2 credit. So whatever I am telling you, you will be doing it in semester number 2. And third semester, you will actually start working on that project. So you will be formulating problem, you will be formulating your topic of your research project in semester 2, and semester 3 you will be doing experiment. So semester 3 will be devoted by doing the experiment, and semester 4 would be for dissertation and presentation. So whatever experiment you will be doing in semester 2, you will be drafting the dissertation of that. you will be whatever result you will be getting, you will be aligning that result, you will be interpreting the result, you will be drafting the report, this is what we call a dissertation, and then you will be making presentation. So this is how your research methodology course will go for 4 semester. Now let me tell you, my friend, I'm now, please be focused now, because this is what you will have to do in semester 2. अभी तक जो मैंने बताया ना, मैंने थोड़ा बहुत डिटेल आपको बताया, बट आई विल बी वेरी स्पेसिफिक नाउ. ओके, ये बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट होगा आपके लिए, ये बिकॉज दिस इज व्हाट ही विल बी डूइंग इन सेमेस्टर 2. क्योंकि आप what he will be doing now in semester 2, whenever he will be taking admission in semester 2, the head of the department is going to make an announcement, and he will be advised to select the project guide. Okay, so jitne bhi professors hai, whatever teachers we are having, I mean depending on specialization, because we are having 4 specialization in the department: electronics, material science, then nuclear physics and spectroscopy. There are 4 specializations. You can opt one of those specialization, one of the 4 specializations, and then as far as myself is concerned, I'm looking after electron specialization. Myself and Professor Navarkele, both of us looking after electron specialization. And then like if you opt for electron specialization, then you can like usually we are having 50 odd students for first semester. So usually we accommodate around 12 to 13 students in each specialization, around 12 to 13 students in each of 4 specialization. So मान लो 12-13 student अगर electrons को आते हैं, तो out of those 12-13 student, half 50% student will come to me, and remaining 50% student will go to Professor Navarkele. So you will be advised to give the options. तो आप किसके पास project करना चाहते हो? So what a wise suggestion would be, in fact, like earlier we used to keep it open-ended. मतलब स्टूडेंट को जहां जाना चाहे, जितने भी टीचर्स हमारे पास है, जिन टीचर के पास जाना चाहे उनके पास जा सकते हैं. पहले ऐसा ऑप्शन था, बट वेरी रिसेंटली we have the department has modified that methodology now, like within the specialization. Like if you opt for electron specialization, then you will be allowed to enroll yourself under either me or Professor Navarkele if you are for electron specialization. Similarly, we have got 2 teachers for solid state physics, I mean material science, Professor Dode and Professor Murukar madam. And then for nuclear physics, I guess Professor Jadhav and Professor Pavina Pawar madam. And for spectroscopy, we have only 1 teacher nowadays, Professor Undre, Prabhakar Undre. And there are a few more teachers, but of course they are not so far. They are not attached to any of the specialization. But still, if you want, you can go to them as well, like Professor Sharma and Professor Dr. Dharne. Okay, so लेकिन आपको मेरी सलाह ये रहेगी कि what you need to do is, again this session is going to be terminated and you will have to